The year's 2006. I'm a happy little 6-year-old playing baseball, not having a care in the world, and one movie comes out that shaped my childhood. That movie was Happy Feet. Oh my god, Happy
What
Feet.
a movie!
Happy Feet was the best.
It's dancing penguins!
Ha! Just kidding, that movie's terrible. Could you imagine that movie shaping my childhood? Of course, there were movies like Cars, Over the Hedge, and hell, even Monster House that came out that year. But this one movie has been watched more than any other in my life. I am, of course, talking about The Benchwarmers. The Benchwarmers was a 2006 Adam Sandler film starring Rob Schneider, Jon Heder, and David Spade. I maybe watched this movie over 100 times, and could easily quote it when I was a kid. I hadn't seen it in around 8 years until recently when I rewatched it, hoping it would hold up as well as I expected it to. The Benchwarmers was not only an unfunny movie, it was also racist, sexist, pointless, and just annoying. Sure, there are great moments and stuff I still quote to this day.
He's got documentation.
But this movie didn't hold to my expectations. Another one of these movies I watched quite often was Open Season. This also happened to be a 2006 film. I've seen this at least a dozen times because I used to laugh uncontrollably when Elliot sang the Teddy Bear song. So I decided, being at least 10 years removed from this movie, to rewatch it and hope that Open Season would hold up 15 years after its initial release. Open Season starts with an establishing shot, with Beth preparing to go to work as Boog tries to scare her, and the audience believes she will be attacked by Boog. Beth has a stronger roar, and we get an understanding of the dynamic between the two. We get a musical montage as Boog and Beth head into town and get one of the worst shots I've ever seen. So they have these consistent cuts throughout the beginning, and then Boog hits a mailbox, and we just stay on it. Then we stay on it, and we stay on it some more. Does anyone else wonder why they stayed on this for so long? Anyways, we see that Boog is known around the town as Beth's pet, and then we get introduced to Gordy. Gordy's the town sheriff, and we cut to Boog and Beth performing to show why Beth keeps Boog, and then finally Shaw is established. Shaw is the main antagonist hunter man, entering with a buck on his hood and holding his rifle Lorraine. Shaw ran over Elliot, the buck, and Elliot is presumed to be dead. Elliot surprises Boog being alive and begs Boog to let him go. Shaw is arguing with Beth as we learn his motivation for being an avid hunter of trying to keep the natural order of men on the top and animals on the bottom. Once Boog lets Elliot out, we cut back to Boog and Beth preparing for bed as Beth sings Boog his bedtime story. Boog is awoken by Elliot chucking rabbits at the window so Boog can let him in so Elliot can help Boog escape. Boog doesn't want to leave, but Elliot persuades him with woohoo bars. Boog and Elliot break into a gas station, and we get our second musical montage until Boog gets caught by Gordy and gets in trouble with Beth. Gordy tells Beth it's time for her to let Boog go, and she asks for just one more summer with Boog. The next day cuts, and we see Shaw driving through town seeing the wreckage as he sees Elliot and chases Elliot with his truck. Elliot hides with Boog backstage during his show, and Boog attacks Elliot. This causes the audience to panic, and Shaw lines up the shot for Elliot, but it's actually Beth tranquilizing Boog, and now must take Boog up to the falls to let him go into the wild. Boog nearly kills Elliot for ruining everything, but instead leaves Elliot trapped as Boog tries to find his way back. Boog cannot seem to find his way and decides to try and climb a tree to get a better viewpoint, and we are introduced to McSquizzy and his army. Boog finally decides to free Elliot as Elliot tells Boog he knows the way. Boog and Elliot run into porcupine, beavers, skunks, salmon, and the two greatest characters ever, these ducks that act like they were in this great duck war and have PTSD because they were the only two who survived and can't fly in a V formation with only two ducks. I could talk about these ducks for hours. Elliot finds Giselle his main love interest as the rest of the herd shows up and bullies Elliot because he's a loser. Boog and Elliot sleep defeated, and Boog asks Elliot to sing him his bedtime song. Boog wakes up and they find the same beavers as he realizes they've gone in a circle. Boog decides to cross the dam and breaks it. Shaw has been hunting Elliot and his car becomes a boat in this chase scene. Everyone in the forest is mad at Boog, as he is responsible for them not being safe above the falls just a day before open season. We cut back for a quick second for Beth to tell Gordy she's worried about Boog. Boog finds a house in the woods and can finally use a bathroom and eat food. This is actually Shaw's house, and Boog nearly dies, but escapes with his teddy bear. Elliot, defeated, barely hides from the hunters, but it was Boog coming back to help the forest fight against the hunters. We then get the fight scene where they easily take out the hunters, and in the midst of celebration, Shaw shows up to almost kill Boog but doesn't, and then Beth shows up to bring Boog back. Boog decides to stay in the forest, and they live happily ever after. I'm not going to start off by saying I'm an expert when it comes to film scoring. There are incredible video essays about the intricacies of leitmotifs, themes, and the evolution of music through a movie, so take what I have to say with a grain of salt. With that being said, the soundtrack to this movie is horrible. The use of pop music in movies has become more of a trend in the mid to late 2010s, but Open Season goes a different route. Instead of just throwing in generic pop song number 86, they decide to have very on-the-nose music for every instance. What are some examples, you may ask? Well, let me show you. We start in the wilderness in this wild, wild life of Boog and Beth going into town in her Jeep. What song should we choose for that? Boog has started to lose control as they are looting a convenience store, and Boog has gotten drunk over sugar. Beth has to lose her pet Boog and is very sad.
Every once in a while, your body says
the animals are fighting the hunters holding guns. This bad music with bad lyrics describing what is happening on screen is a huge slap in the face to actual film scorers who take the time to meticulously figure out things. This is just what is happening. Let's sing about it. It, like everything else I'll talk about, is just lazy in this movie. I'll get this part of the way because this isn't nearly as important as other aspects, but it still would have helped the movie if they didn't make these decisions. So the animals can communicate with each other and understand basic human ideas such as the concept of hunting season, or knowing what a pet is, or even knowing what a warden is. But then when Elliot is in Boog's place, he doesn't understand the concept of toilet paper or what a garbage can is. This is why I don't like The Little Mermaid as much, is because Ariel apparently doesn't know what feet are or what a street is, but understands the concepts of dancing, legs, and other things. Either have them not understand anything or understand everything. You can't have it both ways. I'm also going to throw in pop culture references here because it's just excessive and unnecessary, almost like saying, you know this thing, and you'll like this movie because we also know that this thing exists. It doesn't add anything to the story, and it makes the filmmakers and screenwriters look lazy. Some of these examples are,
you in what army?
Boy! Oh, really? You in what army?
It just makes it seem like the writers can't write a solid story without the audience being like, I get that reference, so I must now laugh because they made a reference to the thing that I understand. It's a cheap way of buying enjoyment, and another thing that is really lazy. Finally, Boog's strength as a bear always annoys me. Just like Elliot not understanding basic human concepts, but then also knowing what a warden is, Boog is apparently this incredibly weak character because Beth can scare him. He can't go to the bathroom without toilet paper, he has to sleep in a bed, he can't fish, he can't win hand-to-hand fight with Shaw. But a bear, even if they were this well-trained animal that is a pet, can easily overpower a man and has the strength to injure anyone unintentionally. So why make it seem like he can't overpower them? I would suggest that they make Beth get rid of Boog after he unintentionally injures someone because he is a safety risk for the city, so she is forced to bring Boog up to the falls. They somewhat have this dynamic after the people's fears have overtaken them when Boog attacks Elliot. But if Boog accidentally injured Gordy or something along those lines, it would fit Boog as a character being a bear rather than him being afraid because he can't overpower Shaw. I do understand that he doesn't know his strength because he's been pampered and he doesn't need to use it for any reason, but it's in his nature. So why not have an Iron Giant moment where the Iron Giant has its natural instincts take over him and his better judgment? Alright, now that we got that out of the way, Open Season has a pretty good opening besides this one shot, because it shows the dynamic of Beth and Boog, showing Beth's motivations, Boog's characters, and then we go to the city and see how they deal with a bear being a pet, but then... God damn it, I tried to keep my cool. Elliot is one of the most annoying characters in movie history. The movie had some positive things going for it, and then Elliot ruined it. This is the point where the entire movie goes wrong. Okay, so why does Elliot ruin the movie in my eyes? Elliot and Boog have a very poor dynamic in this fish out of water story. Another amazing duo that has the exact same dynamic is Shrek and Donkey. Shrek and Donkey are an iconic duo, and from the very start, Shrek's character already has more depth to it than Boog with the opening scene. We learn very early all Shrek wants to do is to be alone in a swamp undisturbed. Not too long after, all these fairy tale creatures show up at his house and on his land, and he and Donkey must go to see Lord Farquaad to help Shrek get his swamp alone again. Shrek is hesitant to take Donkey because he's the polar opposite of Shrek, being an overly optimistic, talkative, and extremely extroverted person.
But you gotta have friends.
Stop singing! Well, it's no wonder you don't have any friends.
Compared to Shrek, who's cold, quiet, blunt, and introverted. Boog is extroverted, talkative, friendly, and harmless. Elliot is extroverted, talkative, over-friendly, and annoying. These two are more similar than they think, so they don't contrast each other. Also, Donkey is well-meaning, wanting to help Shrek, and always tries to be the best friend to everyone he can be. Donkey has been outcast from his community and is trying very hard to fit in and find anyone that will accept him for who he is. Elliot, on the other hand, is trying to return the favor to Boog, and only uses Boog when it's in Elliot's self-interest, where Donkey does everything that is in the best interest of the others around him. Donkey's annoying to Shrek because he's the opposite of Shrek, and everything Shrek doesn't think he wants. Donkey is just doing what he thinks is best. Elliot is only concerned about his own self-interest, only truly helping Boog when it is to return a favor, and even to the bitter end is a self-serving man, only really doing unselfish things for Boog, like singing for Boog because they're partners. Elliot is only partners because he needs Boog's protection. Shrek, on the other hand, needs Donkey to be the navigator, and Shrek will tolerate him because Donkey is a means to an end, similar to Elliot, but Shrek doesn't fully accept Donkey, but instead tolerates him some more because he starts to realize how much Donkey cares for others around him, as well as trying to please Fiona, his new love interest. Donkey's a lovable, chatty, and over-friendly character that rubs Shrek the wrong way, but fits the movie perfectly. On the other hand, Elliot is an annoying little bitch who's self-serving and doesn't add any positive value to Boog. Where Donkey helps Shrek throughout the movie, Elliot is a hindrance to Boog. This is why I think Elliot ruins the movie, because in Shrek, a very similar character arc, Donkey is a lovable character where Elliot isn't helpful, is annoying, childish, and pointless. This somewhat relates to the last because Elliot is a bad character, not only because of the reasons I previously listed, but because he has zero motivation. The reason Elliot is here is because he's saved by Boog, and he needs to return the favor to Boog, and then needs Boog to get to safety. What is Elliot's motivation for being kicked out of the herd? He's a loser. That's it. it doesn't give us much view into the dynamic that her, Giselle, and Elliot all had before he was kicked out. Another character with no motivation is Beth. Why does she have Boog? I mean, sure, it looks like she cares for him because he's her pet, and she also uses him for her job, but how can she actually afford a pet, let alone to feed a bear? Finally, Shaw has low motivation as well. His motivation for being a relentless hunter is because he feels like he's seen this awakening where the animals will overrun the world and humans will become pets.
Dog worship.
Boog really is the only character besides the forest animals that have any motivation, and a movie that tries to be emotional with 3 of its main characters having low motivation, it just struggles to make audience care if you don't have any motivation. This is the least controversial part because there's no way anyone laughed at this movie without also cringing. The comedy is unrelenting and terrible. Before I get into bad comedy, let me point out a few of my favorite jokes.
What do you got?
Wood. What do you got?
Wood. You want to trade?
How can you make a V with only 2 duck, you ask, huh?
Honestly, this was my favorite scene in the entire movie, and I would say these ducks have more character than any of the others in the movie. One movie that did a really well job with rich and deep characters is The Willoughbys. In one single scene, the framing, character design, writing, and art all give these characters so much depth to them that the viewer starts to think about a backstory for these characters. And Open Season has none of that. These characters are bland, the voice acting is lazy, the story is cookie cutter, the score is horrible, everything is just lazy by the director and makes the audience disengage from the story. The story also not being fantastic or written well is almost overshadowed because even if there was a quality story hidden in there, the audience wouldn't be able to catch it because there is no second to breathe. Whenever there's a moment of silence, they just include a fart joke, or make Elliot whine,
I'm a unicorn! Don't look at me!
or use racial stereotypes.
I suggest you turn round and head right back from whence you came.
The race thing in this movie is kind of a thing of its own, but when you look up the cast for this movie, the main voice actor for Boog, Martin Lawrence, isn't even on the original list. You need to expand the list, then scroll down to where he's hidden. Do with that what you will. But the comedy is really annoying to me in this movie, because even when there's a good scene, they add comedy on top of it for no reason.
Hey, Earl, ain't that your truck?
It's constant action, comedy, action, comedy, action, comedy, action, without any time to breathe. And Elliot isn't even funny, he's just annoying. All of the comedy is catered towards child humor, which you already know I despise because they don't take animation as a serious medium, but instead try and throw it towards the kids.
I thought log was a color.
I can't see my feet.
I killed a man.
I was going to separate this into 2 sections, but I'll include this here because they kind of go hand in hand. I think the dialogue and the delivery are just not good.
No, the think tank. The log cabin. The Johnny on the spot. The Oval Office.
The comedy may be hindered by this, so I might give it somewhat of a pass, but the dialogue is just not good, and it doesn't help the delivery to try and make it feel natural throughout.
This ain't happening. It's some kind of mistake. Thank Boog. She's mad, but you can fix this. All right, I'll go back and I'll give her the face. The face.
So the combination of the terrible comedy and the horrible writing of the story work hand in hand because both of them are terrible. So of course, I'm not going to expect this to be a great movie because it's just trying to bombard me with terrible childish humor rather than having a good, rich story. Some of you may have noticed in my plot summary, I left out 3 characters and events that revolve around them. Mr. Weenie, Bobby, and Bob are some of the most irrelevant characters ever. They're added in here to not only extend the incredibly short runtime, but also act as comedic relief. Normally when you have comedic relief such as Olaf from Frozen,
Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
or Mushu from Mulan,
to guide you through your masquerade. Come on, if you're gonna stay, you're gonna work.
They not only serve a slight purpose in the plot, but also are the majority of the comedy, where the movie would be too serious for children without them. Sometimes it works.
Good afternoon. My name is Russell, and I am a wilderness explorer in Tribe 54.
And other times you have Mr. Weenie.
I've been living a lie! Oh, please, take me with you.
These three are in a handful of scenes, and all except for maybe a part of one is even important, and even then, they don't need to be in there. And that's the reason why I say maybe a part, because it's like so minuscule that it doesn't matter. I'm talking about this scene where Shaw tackles Mr. Weenie and tells Bobby and Bob about his vision of humans being overtaken by animals. These three don't need to be the three he talks to, because he could have told a cardboard cutout and the point would still be made. But of course, we need to have them here so they can say this.
We're looking for Bigfoot.
And Shaw can do this.
The moment you turn your back, he'll shiv you.
Oh no, he can't. We had him fixed.
And Mr. Weenie can do this.
I've been living a lie!
And the end of the movie has this. Again, more comedy slapped on to make the movie less serious hinders the story that they tried to develop, and it doesn't matter because no one cares. You could argue that most of the forest characters don't matter. Ian honestly doesn't matter, the skunks don't matter, most of the deers really don't matter, the porcupine doesn't matter. There are loads of others that could be removed. I mean, sure, you could take all of them out, but then it'd be a pretty barren story and wouldn't help the writers build what they attempted to create it, which didn't pan out, but they tried. I understand why they're keeping it in, but the majority of these characters don't matter, which is a bit annoying because if someone isn't needed, why would you add them in the first place? Okay, now, how do you fix this movie? I listed loads of problems, and like most video essays I've done before, I could have left it at that and made it a rant. But I'd like to look and see if they could have done something to make this movie better. Alright, so for one, I'd change the score instantly. Hire someone who knows how to score a movie, and don't have the music sing what's really happening. Make it help the movie, not treat us like toddlers. Secondly, we need continuity on what Elliot and the animals do and don't comprehend. This is a small issue, but it's just a bit annoying to sit through and try and ignore the fact that he has no clue what toilet paper is, but knows what a warden is. Thirdly, change Elliot, Beth, and Shaw. Elliot is an annoying little shit that is a self-interested, pretentious asshole who isn't helpful to the characters. If I were to change Elliot, I would change the fact that he was kicked out for being a loser. This doesn't motivate him in the slightest, and would make much more sense if he were accepted, but when he comes back with a broken antler, they laugh and kick him out. It shows that the deer are petty and don't realize that Elliot hasn't changed, so when he saves Boog, he can have a redemption arc, he can earn the trust of the herd, and be accepted back, and win over Giselle, even though winning over a woman is a whole other issue that is sexist, but we can't fix everything. I also want Elliot to be more sympathetic like Donkey, because the dynamic makes it feel like Elliot is there for a reason, where right now it feels like he's a chore for Boog to deal with no necessity to help him besides making Boog look like a better bear. I understand they want to build character growth for Boog, but in Shrek, both Donkey and Shrek grow because Shrek realizes that isolation and being blunt with people isn't always the best option for both parties concerned. Beth, on the other hand, is built up pretty well to start with her relationship with Boog. What I would prefer is if Beth had a tragic backstory. My proposal is that Beth was married and her husband wanted Boog, but she didn't. He passes away early, and Beth now is responsible for this cub, who she kind of resents, but soon builds a crazy attachment to, and makes the decision to let Boog go even more difficult. This motivates her character for the audience to care about her, and it makes it seem like Beth has no choice when she brings Boog back, and we think for a second maybe Boog should go back and Beth would get the emotional support we needs. You combine this with the idea that Boog accidentally injures someone, so there's more complexity to the issue. This change takes her from a one-dimensional character to someone with emotions, a backstory, and helps Boog become more motivated in the process because Beth truly wants him back. Finally, Shaw. I think Shaw is fine because sometimes it's hard to write an antagonist, but his reasoning for wanting to hunt animals is insane and would greatly benefit from another tragic backstory, like his kid got mauled from a bear, or maybe he has a fake leg because he got mauled from a bear. Something to make him more relatable and not so much of, well, Boog has to win because Shaw's a terrible person. This is probably what would help the movie the most because I can deal with all the other issues if you have a strong character-driven story, but Open Season isn't character-driven, or story-driven, or driven at all, really. The other flaws are not as imperative, so they're less focused on, but Open Season has lots of flaws, and changing the characters would help drastically. This also leads into the comedy, because Elliot and the majority of the side characters are driven by the fact that they are here for comedic relief. If you change Elliot to be a serious character and only the butt of the joke every once in a while, I'm fine with Mr. Weenie and these two dinguses. You could either make Elliot a serious character, or he could be the Russell to the Mr. Fredricksen, or the Mushu to the Mulan. If they want to keep Elliot as comedic relief, you need to lay off the jokes from other characters and remove characters only intended for comedy and nothing more. If you change the structure of how each character, besides Boog, is built, you drastically help every aspect of this movie and revitalize it to where I might actually care about the story, because there are actually jokes I enjoyed. Elliot is in dire need of changing. Beth would be helped if she was changed and written in more, and Shaw could also benefit from a slight change. The difficulty is that by changing all these characters, only the beginning scene and really just the ending can stay because the entire concept has changed where the target audience is more adults than children compared to 7-year-old boys with an immature sense of humor. This movie isn't an easy fix because it's broken at its core with the amount of unnecessary jokes and poorly written main characters. Elliot was the worst offender of these facts, and if he's going to stay your secondary character, you can't have him be this annoying, childish, and selfish. This may have helped the box office for Open Season 2 that earned a measly $8.7 million compared to the actually absurd $200 million the first made. In order to build a successful trilogy or franchise like Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, or How to Train Your Dragon, you have to have a good movie that intrigues audiences to want to watch the second, rather than leaving the theaters with, at best, a mediocre review. I may have also liked the jokes more if it wasn't just so childish. If you design every character to have as much depth as these two ducks, I would have loved this movie. But, alas, that's not the case. I think Open Season has something there hidden under the vast pile of trash, and if they remove some of that garbage, it could be something. Open Season was successful in the box office to make sequels and make a profit, but I would have much rather they focus on a serious movie or a character-driven movie to make a truly captivating movie rather than what we got. Open Season is nothing more than a lazy cash grab. It has zero depth or inherent value to the viewer to ever want to watch this movie again.
Oh, Mike.
I was on TV!
Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe. What else do YouTubers say? Ring the bell thing and you get notified. And I will see you guys later.